Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another incredible guest to introduce to you now. Maria Emmerich is a world-renowned nutritionist who specializes in the ketogenic diet and exercise physiology. Maria struggled with her health and weight throughout childhood, which led her to become a very passionate nutrition expert. Maria's expertise has sent her around the world speaking about ketogenic diets. She spends most of her time with clients around the world, specializing in helping autoimmune disorders, diabetes, heart disease, cholesterol issues, alopecia, Hashimoto's, cancer, epilepsy, seizures, depression, and anxiety. Yes, that is quite the list. She is also an international best-selling author of several books, including Keto, the Carnivore Cookbook, and the 30-Day Ketogenic Cleanse. She has authored many of other books, including several cookbooks and nutritional guides, alongside her husband, Craig, who we hosted on episode 478 of Boundless Body Radio. Some of her readers include Valerie Bertinelli, Al Roker, and Halle Berry. And Maria contributes to Halle's site on a regular basis. Maria has helped millions of people with her books and coaching to lose weight and regain their health utilizing a low carbohydrate approach. You can find Maria at ketomaria.com. Maria Emmerich, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you. I never said millions, but who knows, right? I mean, I've sold a million copies of the book, I suppose, but
millions. You go way back. I told Craig this. You're an OG. I remember listening to the pair of you. I believe it was the Peak Human podcast back when I was just starting to learn about this stuff. You guys had already been doing it for such a long time, and it was just a really eye-opening, kind of a thing to learn. And so I really am very grateful for you and all the work that you've done.
Oh, thank you. And I'm grateful for you for getting the word out like this.
It's such an honor.
Thanks.
It's such an honor. Okay, first question. I don't know if you've ever gotten this, but I would like to do keto or a low carbohydrate diet, but I really like food. I'm a foodie, so I can't do low carbohydrate. What would you say to that?
Me too. I would say me too. Absolutely. My son and I were just recording a YouTube video making Nutter Butters. Do you know what Nutter Butters are?
Well, I know the ones that I ate by the truckload.
Yeah, right? But these are like good and tasty and totally keto and low carb. And like, that's what my mission is like, whatever you feel like is your food that's setting you back from trying it. I swear I have a recipe for you. I have a recipe for Pop-Tarts because do you know the show Gilmore Girls?
I do. Yes.
So I was watching that with my boys and they're like, Mom, what's a Pop-Tart? Because she loves Pop-Tarts, right? And I was like, ooh, I can show you that. And so I came up with a recipe for it and way better than the cardboard you get at the store. But whatever you feel is your thing, I'm sure I have a recipe for it because I too am a foodie. And if it's not good, if I was told I had to eat chicken breast and broccoli, I wouldn't even try,
No,
but if someone says you can have cinnamon rolls, but you have to make them, would you do it? And I would be like, I promise you, you're going to lose weight, feel great, like, get off medication, but you have to make them. You can have ice cream, but you have to make it.
That's right. Totally different.
Some people say they don't have time to do that, but I like kind of laugh because nobody's busier than I am. I wrote 3 books in a year. We homeschool our children. I work with celebrities. I don't have the time, but I make the time.
Yeah. Is that it? Is that all you do? Really? Retreats all over the world, speaking everywhere. Like that's
it. Thank you.
The person that says they don't have enough time, I'd really like to audit the rest of their day. Same with people that say, I don't have the money to spend on food. Awesome. Let's check out what you're paying per month for your phone and your car. Let's just see.
Do you go to Starbucks? I don't even have a car.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm flipping through one of your cookbooks. I've got a bunch of them here. They're just absolutely beautiful. You've done such a good job from the beginning. I love that every recipe has a picture next to it. Some cookbooks don't have that. I really appreciate that. And I remember these were the first cookbooks that I remember seeing come to mainstream places like Costco. It all of a sudden was this thing that like people were becoming more aware of. And your cookbooks help make that a lot more accessible to people.
Oh, thank you. I remember getting a picture that my parents sent me. They're down in Florida and they're like, oh my gosh, your books are at Costco. And when they were looking at it, someone said, oh my gosh, get that. It's really good. And I just think it kind of hit them that I'm not just, some, I don't know, like just their daughter who, like they kind of knew what I did, but to hear like some stranger at Costco be like, oh, that's a good book. Get it. Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, boom.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. I did want to start this conversation about talking about your kids. Craig and I also spoke a little bit about your kids. They had the unique opportunity that I certainly didn't have. I don't believe you had. Craig definitely didn't have, of eating the proper way and the proper food. And so I love asking parents this question: was it terribly difficult to either start them off the right way from the beginning or transition them in any way away from what most parents would say is impossible? I would love to have my kids eat less sugar, but it's everywhere, so I'm not even going to try.
No, because they don't have any money. They don't have a car. They can't drive. They eat what I make, and what I make is really delicious. So it wasn't like there was no, here's the thing though. I'm going to be honest with you. They were probably starving. And so they were really grateful to get food. You
Mm,
know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I might cry, but it was the truth, you know?
Wow.
Um, like I remember my oldest, he would hold food in his mouth for a very long time because in Ethiopia that they didn't have a lot. So he would like hold it because he thought that the flavor would, only last for a little bit. And it's like, oh man, we're so lucky to have food in abundance, but yet we take it to the point of abuse, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, it was definitely like a transition teaching them that food will always be there because meals were very stressful. Like one of them was very happy, but one child would scream for more food, even though I knew that little belly was stuffed full. And so, yeah, meals became very stressful for me. But it just took time teaching them that there's always food. There's always food. You don't have to worry about that. So,
Well, I was not aware of any of that, Maria. That's pretty emotional. I know your
well,
children were
it
adopted,
is.
but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stories that, people think that it's this like big halo of, wonderfulness. And it's very like, I remember it was just very stressful. And I just wanted to, the love was there, all of that, but it was just everything was a transition. They never were in a car before, so that was scary. And then in Ethiopia, they don't have car seats, so you get to hold them in your lap. But then you get to the United States, you land from the plane and you have to put them in a car seat in the back. And like, oh my gosh, you could have heard the screams from, the next state because like, why am I strapped into this? Like, I don't get it. And we had an hour drive home. I was like, oh my gosh. So
That's crazy. I've heard that a lot of places in the world look at our practices with our children and just think like, what are you doing? This is child abuse to make your kid sleep in another room or something. Is like, what are you doing? Wow.
mhm. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, we adopted my brother and
Oh,
sister as well. My mom couldn't have kids after she had me for some reason, or they just had me and saw how I was. They were like, let's find a different route here. And I remember them saying like it didn't matter whether it was me and being their blood or adopted. They loved my brother and sister every little bit as much as they loved me. And I think that's a really special thing. They said the second we saw them, we already knew that is our family. It doesn't matter the blood.
yeah, it really doesn't matter. And what's really cool is my youngest, he said he wants to adopt. So I think that whatever we're doing, like he's having a good time and he loves his family. And I thought it was interesting what you said, like that my kids are lucky to have this experience of eating healthy. We were playing a game during the holidays, and one of them was what did you do before it was cool? And so we all had to try to guess what his answer was. And his answer was, I was eating healthy before it was cool.
I love
And I was
it.
like, you are a rock star, because
That's so awesome.
he is tall, he is ripped, he is like all muscle. And he just, I mean, I don't know, just, I'm so proud of him.
That's amazing. Craig said he just runs all over the football field and just
Yeah.
has endless amounts of energy. And just it's the same thing you hear from lots of parents in this space that like it wasn't as hard as we thought to get them away from the sugar. You give them enough time. I think the kids prefer it. Even if you gave them the option, I think they usually would prefer to eat better and feel better and have their skin be better and their brain work better. Like it just seems like across the board, like this is not only possible, but it is optimal for sure.
Yeah, and starting young is way better because I'm grateful that I had my hardships when I was a teenager because now my friends are in their 40s and they're like, help Maria, and their habits are well ingrained by then. My habits were fairly new. I was able to change them quite easy. And, your children, yeah, there's going to be school, there's going to be birthday parties, and you can't stress out about that. But you can teach them, like when they come home and they don't feel good, don't yell at them. Just teach them like, yeah, this is why we eat this way, because I want you to feel great and I don't want you to be sick. It hurts me to see you like that. And just, teach it as a learning experience, because everybody's had those times, like even like those keto gummies and stuff that are not keto in my mind, but like, if somebody offers them and they're like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm like, yeah, they're not my recipe of gummies. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. You mentioned your struggles, and I look at people who are very successful and they're doing a lot of work and are very strong. And you strike me as one of the strongest people I've ever gotten to talk to. And I think back on what makes us strong, and it's those dark times, it's the hard times we had to go through. And hearing your story about, your own health and how you had to try to figure out a new way when everything was against you, I think is incredible. And I'd love for you to share that story with us here.
Oh yeah. So I was 16 years old and I wasn't feeling well. I was twice my size. I don't know if this is audio or video also.
We'll do
But
both.
well, okay. I was twice my size. And I went to the family doctor and she told me that I had something called PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is basically, now we know it as type 2 diabetes that affects female fertility. I also left that visit with an antidepressant because I was pretty depressed, an acid blocker, and something for IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. I was a total mess. And she said it was nothing I was doing wrong. It was just the cards I was dealt in life. But let me tell you that I was in high school, but before I would go to school, I worked at a coffee shop. So I would get up at like 4 a.m. to make the scones and the muffins and the cinnamon rolls. I'd go to school, go to band class and all that. And after school, we would close about 5 p.m. and I would go back to school, back to the coffee shop, and whatever didn't sell, I got to go home with. So you probably think I'm lying, but I would make extra cinnamon rolls because I like Fridays, Saturdays, like days that I knew that they were going to sell. I'm like, oh, I want to have like 4 of them. So I'm going to make, I would make extra. And I would go home with boxes, Seinfeld, like eating the muffin tops.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Great
That's what it was
episode.
like. I had so many, I could just eat the muffin tops, right? And it was no wonder I was sick. It wasn't the cards I was dealt. It was what I was eating. There wasn't the internet back then. This is like 27 years ago now. But you can clearly look up what causes PCOS. It was excess caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. And I was like, oh crap. I had like an IV of mochas in my arm and eating cinnamon rolls, right? So I really had to change my life. And now if somebody would have said, and this is why people are like, well, if you're carnivore, why do you still write recipes that aren't and stuff? Here's the thing. If someone would have told me then, you can only eat meat and that's it, I wouldn't have even tried. And so what I like to tell people is what your diet is now is going to be different 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You're going to evolve and learn and become better, and your palate will change with time. Because at that time, I was a definite sugar fiend. And so I wouldn't have done the meat thing at all. So I'm not a judgy person. There's way too many of those on Instagram. I don't need that. I'm not that. So just being open to like the process. And I work with children. I work with like my grandpa, he had type 2 diabetes, and he's like, Maria, I'm not going to live without my X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay, I got it for you. Right? Don't worry. I got ice cream for you. Okay. And it's really good, especially like the allulose now. Are you seeing the benefits of that?
Yeah, it seems like it opens up lots of different options for more people.
It does. But what it does to the body is it helps with glucose metabolism. It helps with it's basically like a GLP-1. It like
I didn't know this.
signals that satisfaction that you're full and you don't need to eat extra.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I know. So like, I want people to have an open mind and not be so judgy on me or somebody else for their eating styles, because, planting a seed in people's mind, you have no idea how that's going to blossom and grow and maybe change their habits and their life,
Yeah. I constantly need to remind myself that this has been a process. And I just want to go around and tell everybody, oh, you should try carnivore. Well, I've been into health and fitness for over 2 decades now. And I only knew about keto like 5, 6 years ago. And yeah, now I'm doing a more strict version of carnivore and it's easy for me. But that wasn't the case in the beginning. I would have said the same thing. Like, I'm not going to go without, bread and dessert every now and again. Ice cream's fine. Like, you
Right.
do need to help give people hope that is a type of progression. So I'm curious, like going back 27 years, you're right, not a lot of internet at all. How were you able to learn any of this stuff? And what was it that made you say, okay, these are the bad things. So now what am I going to go eat?
Well, I knew what I couldn't have. And there was a diet called Atkins, keto. And so I did that. And I was, still in high school. Everybody thought I couldn't do it. And just being like the stubborn person that I am, if you say I can't do something, oh, you watch out. And what's interesting is when you do cut out sugar or carbohydrates, the people that are closest to you, they try to have you fail, like they're afraid of you changing in a bad way, but it's like, no, I'm changing for I'm sick. I want to be better, and so whenever like my mom made me my favorite pie, like it just gave me the willpower to be like, nope, I don't need that. And so I went to school for nutrition and exercise physiology, and I met Craig when I was only 17. He was much older than I was, but I was 17. I was married before I could legally drink alcohol. And he knew I was like, I was told I couldn't have my own kids. He's like, that's fine. We're going to adopt. So we just started adopting. And I was a rock climbing guide right out of college just because I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was just waiting for the adoption to go through. And he lost his job, which I didn't have insurance. So whenever you lose like job insurance and all of that health insurance and stuff, your adoption, all the money goes back to zero basically, because they have to redo all those tests. So not only did we have a job loss, we lost all that money. Like the depression came back hard. Like we sold our cars. The bank took our house. Like we had nothing. And someone said, Maria, why don't you write some of your recipes in a book to raise money for your adoption? I was like, okay, like I just needed something to look forward to. And they're like, you're going to start a blog. I was like, what's a blog? Like, this was like before blogs were even out there. And I was like, okay. And it gave me a reason to ride my bicycle to the library because I didn't own a computer. And I would write. It gave me a reason to wake up. Like I needed a reason to look forward to. And I would write, a recipe on the blog and I'd have these comments. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. I look forward to it and stuff. And it was all for my children. Like every dime went to the adoption. And before you knew it, Craig's like, I don't think I need a job. Like, and he's like, there's a lot that happened in between there, but he's like, I'm going to be the stay-at-home dad and you're going to be the working mom. I was like, okay. Cause I really loved it by that time. I started a business consulting people. That's what I went to school for. And I never once spent a dime on advertising. I still haven't. And it was all word of mouth. And I feel that that's very powerful because like, there's a lot of keto so-called experts and carnivore experts doing a lot of advertising. And I was like, nope, I don't want to do that because I want people to be confident in what I do because of somebody else's success.
Yeah. And they also want to skip the process. They want to skip all the hard bits so they can get right to selling the books and hanging out with Halle Berry like you get to. Like we just look at that and think like, oh, she's so lucky, like she got to that point. It's like no, she worked her ass off and probably clipped coupons to get a meal from time to time. Like it's that struggle, that fight is what makes you strong, and then you appreciate it so much more when you're able to get there.
Well, like what's the cheapest keto food or was? Eggs?
Probably, right?
Right. Like way back when we first adopted the boys, eggs, that was a rule. One of our meals had to be eggs because that was very, very cheap at the time. Like you get a dozen eggs for $1, right? The neighbor sold them for $1, her, free range chickens. And so my son, my youngest, hated eggs. He would not, I told you he was like starving, but he would not eat eggs. That was the one thing. He's like, I made him every single different way. All the different ways there's millions of ways to make eggs. So one day I had a bunch of hard-boiled eggs. I was like, I'm going to throw these into a blender. I threw them into a blender with a can of coconut milk, some cocoa powder, stevia, vanilla, and a little pinch of cinnamon. And I blended that up. And you want to have a good blender, make it really smooth, but it made the best chocolate pudding. And I couldn't get him to stop. And I made it for Halle Berry. Since you're dropping her name, I'll drop her name. I made it for Halle Berry. She's like, nope, I am not going to eat that. And I was like, just try it. Just try it. And she tried it. And she was like, this is the best chocolate mousse I've ever had. And, you just have to be, I don't know. I like playing with food and seeing what you can come up with. Cause I still don't think, yeah, there's billions of recipes out there, but we haven't come up with everything yet, like
Oh,
proving that with the pudding, or like, have you tried the carnivore bread yet?
I haven't yet. I know you talk about it all the time and it looks really good.
It's like Wonder Bread. It's unbelievable, like,
Wow.
but again, you have to make it. You can't buy this at the store, and you'll never be able to buy it at the store. But like you said, people complain about the cost of or the time of eating. What's interesting, Craig and I, we put our cameras on and we both drove to, or he drove to Chipotle while I made Chipotle at home. This was probably, I don't know, 14 years ago or something. And Chipotle wasn't that far. It was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles away. And it wasn't a busy time. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon. And we were like, okay, we both put a timer on, see how much time it takes. And then we also broke down the cost. Not only by the time he came home with the food, I was done cooking, we were done eating, and we cleaned up already. We had leftovers, and it was about a fourth of the price, even though we used organic or beef. So it's not cheaper, it's not healthier, it doesn't save you time, but people are lazy.
Yep. Yep. It sucks. Eggs are a great example. Like, yeah, they have gone up in price. They used to be very cheap. They're a little bit less cheap now, but I can go to Costco and buy
So
two
cheap.
dozen for $7. And that will give me about 2 or 3 meals if I'm eating, 8, 9, 10 at a time. That's not that expensive. It's not
No,
that expensive. Yeah.
it's not.
It
It's not.
and people, I feel for people because all of this information is just stacked against them. I mean, one of my clients that I trained today just got the information about the Tufts Food Compass stuff, and he was like, "This thing says that like Fruit Loops are healthier than ground beef. Like, where did this come from?" Like, dude, welcome to nutrition science. Welcome to the world of nutrition science. One of the most respected nutrition schools in the country is saying like brand names of cereal are better for you than eggs or beef.
Wow, I
Uh,
didn't even know that. That's sad. I would be really embarrassed if I worked at Tufts.
I
Really
would
embarrassed.
too. I would too, but that's what people see. And so that's their impression. And they see it and they go, "See, I knew it. I knew eggs weren't good. I knew beef wasn't good. They already told me beef caused cancer. I knew this. Let me go back to eating my cold cereal and bread and sandwiches." And it's bananas. It's absolutely crazy. And it's interesting for you being in this world for so long. You've seen the rise of keto. I mean, how long do you think it was before you came across the word keto, ketones, ketogenesis? Like it must have been a
It
while
was
before
probably,
you.
yeah, it was probably like 10, 12 years in.
Yeah.
And at first I was very excited, right? But then I was like, I don't want to be keto anymore. I don't want to call myself that anymore because it was like Duncan Hines has a keto brownie now and the keto bread at Costco and like all of this crap and junk. And then all these people come out of the woodwork claiming they're an expert and preaching that you need to eat this way. And I'm like, no, that's not right. And I don't know. It's just, yeah, it's frustrating because I think that there's a lot of bad advice and it's hard to swim through all of it.
It is. Yeah, it is. I asked Craig the same question because he's also being with you, has been in this world for so long and seen this change. We're getting to this point that the keto as a name is kind of losing, it's falling out of favor a little bit. I told him about, KetoCon is being rebranded next year to Hack Your Health, I believe. We're seeing now what I observed at KetoCon when I was there, like watching the consumers, they were far more interested in the carnivore kind of stuff than they were the keto kind of stuff. And it's an interesting thing because it's good and bad. It's good that I can go to Costco and find your amazing cookbooks, and I can also go to the other store and buy Slim Fast keto nonsense that's super expensive for like half an ounce of individually packaged, whatever the hell that is. What do you think of keto as a term, as a kind of idea?
Uh, It's hard because I don't know. I think that the term is losing efficacy and powerfulness because I think it was very powerful for me anyway in the past. And now I'm like, when people ask what I do or whatever, I'm more likely to, not say that word, the keto word or whatever. More of like the carnivore or ketovore. I do like ketovore because it's keto, but more leaning towards carnivore, which I would say that's even my children, they're that way. Like for, Christmas, we had ribs and steak and meatballs and, deviled eggs. It was all like meat, But yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah.
Double-edged sword. Yeah, double-edged sword. When we were working at the big corporate gym and running weight loss contests, when we started learning about low carb and keto, we were recommending your books and your
Oh,
recipes and sharing your site. We were going to Diet Doctor, who they kind of changed their philosophy a little bit, and their meal plans were awesome. And we could get people to lose tons of fat and just say, like, look, just follow these. We'll teach you the science as you go, but just eat these until you're really full. They'll at least get you in the right direction. And even back then, like 5, 6 years ago, we'd have to tell people, like, don't worry about the keto word. Like, forget that that's there. Just this is a delicious tacoable recipe. Make as much of this as you like, and you'll be fine. But you're right that that word is just kind of has an interesting connotation now. And
yeah.
we are seeing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like when you say keto, people think that all I eat is bacon and butter, which is not what I eat. I more love the protein forward keto people. But here's the thing, keto is great for many, many reasons. And this is why when I work with somebody, the first question is, what are your goals? Because that's going to make me determine which way we go on the diet. It's going to look differently depending on what your goals are. Some people have seizures and epilepsy and they come to me and we're going to go this way, or cancer and we're going to go this way. But let's be honest, 99% of people want to lose weight and I'm going to go this way. Which to some people would be like, that's not a ketogenic diet. I was like, they are too in ketosis. They don't have high keto numbers, but that does not mean they're not going to lose weight. And that's what people like get all hung up on, like their glucose numbers or the keto numbers. And I tell them, okay, my ketones are very low. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It means that my body's very efficient now, because the longer you've been keto, the smarter your mitochondria get. They become more efficient. Same with your thyroid. Your thyroid numbers might look bad, but it's because it's more efficient now. But I also work out in a fasted state. So I'm using all my ketones for energy. So if I test after a workout, there's going to be very, very little. But it doesn't mean that I'm not keto.
Yep. Yep. That's right. No, I love that. And that's why I do my best to make the distinction. There's the keto diet and there's being in ketosis. Like you can be in ketosis in many, many different ways. You could do it plant-based, you could do it carnivore. Like there's lots of things you could do. And I
Just
think it's so
fasting.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And
Nothing.
exactly. And protein and fasting is absolutely something I wanted to talk to you about. Big passion of yours. No, it's not something you really do personally very often, but it's something that you write about and write really well about, a protein sparing modified fast. I think I got that right. I feel like I may have goofed up at the order of the
No, it's perfect. Well, my first nutrition book, I talked about my pure protein days. That's what I called it. And it's where, because I felt better in all, like many ways. The first week I started my journey. I guess I didn't finish. My dog, she was a golden retriever and she was losing patches of her hair. And that same week I went to the doctor who said, it's nothing you're doing wrong, whatever. The vet said, what are you feeding her? And I was like, what? So we changed our diet and we both got healthy. Anyway, I didn't lose weight right away, but I felt like my depression went away, acid reflux went away, IBS went away, but I didn't lose weight. And I was like, okay, that's fine, right? But eventually I wanted to lose weight and I realized I need to turn that fat dial down. I'm eating way too much cheese, way too many nuts. I think that's the biggest problem. People try keto and they eat cheese and nuts. And it's like, it's a great way to put some weight on. So I had to, kind of just did my own experiment, cut the fat down a lot. I cut the carbohydrates, almost to zero, and ate protein, lean protein. And I would do that like 2-3 days a week. Those were my pure protein days. And then I would allow myself one overfeeding day, but it wasn't a Pizza Hut day, but it was like ribs or chicken wings or like a fattier cut of meat. But I just kind of kept on. I was like, the weight just flew off. I lost more than I ever thought I would lose. And people already pick on me for that. I do not do those days anymore. But I still stay this way because I focus on protein first. But technically it's called a protein sparing modified fast. I didn't know there was a medical term for this. And instead of a water fast, which we have found as proven that you will lose muscle mass. And there was a recent study, and we can share that with you. Craig found it. We do assignments with our coaches every week. And this assignment was fascinating how I can't remember how long the fast was. I think it was like a 5-day water fast. The amount of time it took for the leucine shift to kick in again was like 2 days later after starting to eat again.
Wow.
And it's just like fascinating how you can't, get that leucine. And leucine is an amino acid that helps signal muscle protein synthesis, which is important for building muscle. And I mean, I lost a lot of muscle doing OMAD, and there's a whole bunch of, stressors I had with my life, with Craig getting sick. And building muscle is hard. So I'm always like, okay, I do not want to, like I need to get at least, 30, 35 grams of protein every meal. And anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. It's perfect timing because we're going to release this episode during January, which is World Carnivore Month. Hopefully we've got more people interested in it. Dr. Sean Baker just appeared on Rogan for the second time to talk about it. We're now noticing that the term carnivore is being searched more than the term vegan. So it's an interesting time. And you're mentioning the protein. I totally agree with all of that. For somebody who's just starting on this, and let's say their goal is weight loss, how can they be thinking of maybe trying a carnivore diet? Is it something they need to gradually transition into? If we drop this on the 5th of January, is that too late for them? Like, how would you want somebody to really think about a well-designed carnivore diet?
If they want to do it right off the bat, not, second guess it. I have so much free information and a free calculator. You should count your macros even on a carnivore diet. You really should.
The calculator is amazing, by the way.
Oh, I thank you. But like, I would say 90% of people that are coming to me have been doing carnivore with maybe somebody else and putting on 10, 20, 30 pounds, getting very frustrated and being told that they're healing. And when they aren't losing weight, eat another stick of butter. I cut the butter completely out and we, flip that. And that's the most important thing to do when someone does have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. You have to shrink the fat cells and gain or maintain muscle. And you cannot gain muscle eating fat. It's just biology. I'm not, this is not new information. It's just the truth. And so focusing on protein more than fat is going to be very important in a weight loss situation for carnivore. I actually tell people carnivore is great for so many things, but it's not my first go-to for weight loss when I work with a client. It's more for autoimmune, which is, a lot of people that I work with, illnesses like that. But when it comes to weight loss, I would rather cut out dairy and have like non-oxalate foods in there. That is more, because I think carnivore gets really limited for some people, obviously not you, we don't have a problem, but some people get very limited. So they, do a lot of dairy, like butter or cheese or, because that's all carnivore friendly, but it's a great way to put some weight on. And, we poo-poo gluten in this keto community, but we don't address dairy often. And dairy is a more common allergen than gluten is. And so cutting that out is very important in some people. And so then we would do like carnivore level 1 if, it was an autoimmune issue. But if it was for weight loss, I would say, let's do the protein sparing modified fast approach where, you can have a few like non-carnivore foods, such as like mushrooms or whatever, that are going to just open up some more options for you.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to ask you what some of those foods are. Like, I'm kind of with you. I'd like to define carnivore as a hypercarnivore in nature. It's about 75% or greater of the calories coming from animal products. But I don't like to tell everybody all the time that they can never have any plant foods. But I am aware that some are better than others. What are your favorites?
So instead of like spinach or kale, which we know is very high in oxalates, I would say stick to like iceberg. If you want like a salad or something, do iceberg. Romaine doesn't have oxalates either, but like if you want that crunch, which is just fine, right? Like, I don't mind that, but like trying to teach them which ones are the safe ones and not mushrooms. Absolutely fine. If you it just kind of depends on do they have histamine responses, so I kind of like guide it that way. But those are, 2 options, but also like sweeteners, like allulose. If you're a strict carnivore, you're not going to want to do allulose. You don't want to do element. Element has, flavorings in it. It has citric acid in it, whatever. But if you are not carnivore, you could do some sweeteners and flavorings like, I don't know.
That's great. No, that's great advice. And so the sweeteners in particular, as you're designing a diet for somebody and making recommendations, this is where my mind would go. Maybe you will agree or add some nuance to this. I would really want to know whether that person thinks of themselves as like a carbohydrate addict, or they haven't really gotten rid of that sweet taste. And like having a little bit of sweetener would then lead to them eating cinnamon rolls, like you said. Like, do you ever like? Is that how you think about that as far as like who can handle sweeteners and who just probably really shouldn't?
Well, I will say I kind of look at it differently. It's hard to explain, but is this like going to be your all or nothing type thing? Some people they want to rip the Band-Aid off and do it all, but I would say most people don't. They want to be able to have a dessert during the holidays or their birthday or like once in a while. And I'm like, that's okay, but you have to have it like this. There's no almond flour in it, almond flour, almond milk, all of those things, cutting that out and, giving them a guideline that way. For me, like, I would say the carnivore diet got so boring that I didn't even want to eat anymore. And so that was a struggle for me. I had to open it up more. I had to give myself some onions and garlic and, like I'm not eating a ton of it, but that flavor adds a lot to me, but it's not good for Craig. So it's just balances how bad I want to make two of them, but it's not too hard.
Yeah,
But
no, I love that. I found that if I was eating the meat kind of just plain or just with salt, I wasn't eating very much of it. And then I wasn't anywhere near my protein goals. And I could feel that kind of OMAD effect of like, okay, I'm taking this a little too far. I'm lowering my metabolic rate. I feel a little weaker than I used to, less energy. And so then it was like, okay, well, spices, I do okay with spices. I do okay with some low sugar condiments. Some of the sauces that you make are absolutely amazing, by the way. And some of your favorite. Those things can be added in for most people. And so I wouldn't want people to think like you're on beef, salt, and water if you don't have that specific reason to be.
No. We, in that carnivore book, we have carnivore level 1, which is obviously for someone who's very ill, a lot of autoimmune or, gut issues, something to heal with. And it goes up to level 4. And level 4 is adding spices. It is kind of that dirty carnivore, maybe some stevia or, something like that, where you could have like the element drink, or I don't mean to keep saying that, but like, I really like Equip protein powder. It's a beef protein powder, but they sweeten it with stevia. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. I love the levels. I love how pretty much all of your books have these. Even the cookbook ones have so much education in there. There's a good, I don't know, 70, 80 pages that goes into education. It has a much longer list than I read off in the introduction of all the things that we can fix with low carbohydrate diets. Again, the recipes are beautiful. I love that there's a lot of variety in there and people can choose how strict they want to be. Even the recipes in here still only have 4 or 5 ingredients. It's not extravagantly prohibitive if you don't have cooking skills or you don't know what to shop for. It's pretty easy.
My recipes may have been a little bit more difficult before I had children, but then I had kids and I realized what people are talking about. Yeah, time is important. Time is, but here's the thing. If you don't like to cook or you don't know how, get an Instant Pot, get a slow cooker because it does it for you. You don't have to do anything. My favorite gadget was probably a smoker as a carnivore because it adds so much flavor. I don't like turkey at all, but I'll eat a smoked turkey, because it's just boom, it's got it all. So like, but if you don't like to cook, there's gadgets that do it for you. You don't have to think about. But yeah, it's funny. It's like, oh, it's just a cookbook. I'm like, okay, I've written both. The keto book is a nutrition book where the cookbooks are way harder because I have to, make the recipe like so many times and writing the recipe, but then there's also the photography is hard. And then also I want it to be an educational book. I don't want to just give you recipes and be like, why am I eating this? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job writing that line. There's a lot to be learned and you help kind of guide people through. And again, the recipes are great. The way it's laid out in a meal plan is absolutely awesome. I know you work with a lot of women. This always seems to be a challenge. How do you help women get enough protein in their diets when they want to choose a more animal-centric type way of eating?
Because I make cinnamon rolls that way. The cinnamon rolls are like egg whites,
Perfect.
It's the protein, it's the carnivore bread, but then you just add some cinnamon in there. And whether you want to do, I usually do this protein frosting, which is made with egg whites and allulose. I don't know if you've ever made that where you,
I haven't.
it's really fascinating. I couldn't believe it when I tried it, but it's just egg whites, water, and then your sweetener or whatever. But it's really good. But yeah, like you can have those. It's very, to me, ketovore, because it's basically animal protein with a little bit of spices and some sweetener. I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. But again, like it just depends on your taste buds will change. They will change. It takes about 15 days for the taste buds to, turn over. You get new ones every 15 days. So if you cut something out for that long, it's easy to, change your palate. However, it's not as simple as your taste buds craving things. Like a lot of times a memory will trigger. Did you ever smoke?
I did not. I avoided that.
So I was a smoker, like if you can believe that. I did a lot of
No,
bad
not at all.
but there's certain type, like an apple. A lot of people will crave an apple in the fall because they have these memories of their first time having that. So the first time you have something often will signal a trigger of memory, cravings, things like that. So it's not as easy as, oh, just wait 15 days and your palate's going to change. Like it's not that easy. There's a lot of compounding factors that will cause a craving or something of that. And that's why I'm like, okay, if you have a craving, you have to have this. You can have my pizza crust and, make it a carnivore pizza, whatever. But you can't, we're not ever going back to that other stuff. And my kids don't even see that as food anymore.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that. Yeah, hard to believe that you were a smoker. I don't think I was ever at risk. I live in Salt Lake City with all the Mormons, so I was never like in favor around here. So I think I'm good. Yeah, so interesting. So we've read off all the different things that things like insulin resistance can cause in people, all the different health conditions that seem like all they're separate ones, and it's really all stemming from the same thing: poor metabolic health and mitochondrial health, and how we can fix that using low carbohydrate and high protein diets. And we're learning more about mental health. People like Dr. Georgia Ede and Dr. Chris Palmer putting out amazing books, and we're learning more and more about that. And I have to say, this is my favorite story that I got to learn about in 2023. Hal Cranmer running a few homes in Arizona, assisted living homes, the last place I would ever want to be or hang out in. And he learned over time that if you fed them differently, low carbohydrate and more towards carnivore, people were healing. And you see these pictures on social media of these people getting better and dancing and singing. And it's just the most amazing story. And he started working with Eric Colette, who runs a Mind for All Seasons that helps with people with mental disorders. And they had a resident named Melissa who went into their facility, and she scored, I want to say it was a 14 out of 30 for pretty moderate to getting to more severe dementia. And she went in with a good attitude and wanted to do anything to get out of there. And she has recently left the place, and she credits you for helping her a ton. She would spend her free time reading your cookbooks and learning how to do this. What an amazing story.
Like it's really special. It's like the coolest thing to get recognized for. And yeah, Hal, he uses I have a website where you can make meal plans with all my different recipes, because he owns 4 homes now, I believe.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
And so he has, many different cooks at each home, and he just kind of makes a meal plan, sends them the recipes, and the recipes also come with a grocery list, so they have all their things. But to hear these people changing their lives just from eating my recipes, like it's just, gosh, it's just like makes my heart spring with joy. And that's why I'd like, yeah, it's very, very special. I was running the beach. I do in the morning. I usually run before the sun comes up. So it's pretty dark out. And someone was behind me. They're like, Maria Emmerich, is that you? I was like, oh boy, like sweating. And she's like, oh, I just have to tell you, I'm very shy. She said, I'm very shy, but I just have to tell you, you changed my life, because I was very sick and I started doing extended fasting. But then she was diagnosed with osteoporosis, not just osteopenia, but osteoporosis. Her bones were definitely like bad. And she said, then I found you and you told me we have to get protein in and stuff. So she still lost weight, but her bones grew back. If you look at your sheath of your bones are made up of protein. They are.
That's right.
And the best way to reverse like osteopenia or osteoporosis is eat a lot of protein. You know, vitamin K2, things like that. But protein is king when it comes to that. And it's just like, it's so cool to like, just be like riding my bike and people are like, Maria, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just unreal.
We have your bobblehead dolls. We've got your posters on our walls. We are chasing you around health conferences to get your autograph.
No,
Like for
no.
us, you guys changed our lives in a really, really special way. So it might not be as much as Halle Berry, but we are out there. We are your fans for sure.
Oh, you're sweet. I'm very grateful for everybody. Like I'll post a story about me meeting somebody on the beach. Like, oh, I saw you on the beach last week, but I didn't want to interrupt you. I was like, please interrupt me. Like, it's okay, you know. But
Uh,
sometimes I'm like, boys, make sure that you're not fighting because people are probably watching you. Like,
That's funny. Wow. Well, that's an amazing story. It was so cool to talk with Melissa. The other two in the interview were just blown away knowing where she was, which I didn't know, what she was like back then. And she certainly seems completely alert. I think she scored a 2 out of the 30, which is basically like no cognitive impairment. She's 70 years old and now she wants to be a health coach and pass that forward. She's already volunteering at a hospital locally. And it's such a wonderful story and such a cool example that like, yeah, you might be dealing with some serious health stuff, but you can get better. You can heal. And it starts from the food that we eat. And I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge you for such a cool part in that
oh,
amazing
you're so
story.
sweet. But people, we're an input-output system. It's like we're putting diesel in our gas engine and we're getting in trouble. Like, putting Doritos in there is not going to make that engine run very good, but you expect it to, and you expect your brain to be good and, your moods to be good or your kids' moods to be good. And I guess I fear a lot for our children because I thought the meals were bad when I was in school. It's like a whole nother level. Like it's terrible I don't know if I would eat anything on that. Like I'm like at the middle school, elementary school. I'm like, no,
Yeah, we have a community center that has a walking track, and the walking track goes around to an elementary school kind of gymnasium. So I get to see the kids play every now and again, and I don't get to see what they eat for lunch, but I see the result, and I see behavior issues constantly. I see kids that are clearly not metabolically well at a very young age. Their skin just looks different. It's not like looking at your kids who are completely vibrant. They're just it is a little bit different. I'm worried about them too. I'm excited there are people like you out there that are helping to make this stuff accessible and making cookbooks for kids and making this like family friendly. But yeah, it's a long ways we still have to go.
we do have a long way to go. And there's like a lot of bad information out there, like the whole blue zone thing. It's just a bunch of lies. I would say that it's as bad as Ansel Keys, all of his lies. It is
So
bad. If you look at all of the data that he's ignoring and not putting into his studies, like some of the people that are living the longest, they eat mostly meat, like, but he's ignoring that and this doesn't go into the study at all.
yeah, no,
Frustrating.
absolutely. We've
He's on, national TV every week. It's just like
oh yeah.
that Dan Buettner.
Dan Buettner. Yeah, no, we went on the offensive hard on the Blue Zones this year when his Live to 100 documentary came out on Netflix. It was trending in the top 10 for a long time. And yeah, we've done several episodes of Dr. Chafee and Dr. Bill Schindler, people who have spent time in these places in the world. I know you've spent some time very close to these places in the world. And they're like, it's some stupid bait and switch. They're showing these happy, lovely people hanging out with their families where elders are respected and they have purpose and community and they don't eat plant-based. But we're still going to just jam this plant-based message down your throat. It's ridiculous. It's absurd.
It is absurd. And it's funny because I was in Bali earlier this year and we went to a place to learn about their culture and stuff. And we had a guide and she's like, oh, I know how you eat. She said, I was very heavy and I cut out my rice. I cut out, like she said, all the things she cut out. And she's like, that's very healthy. Like, it's just like, even all these cultures know, like, yeah, when they're getting too heavy, uncomfortable, yeah, let's cut out the starches and boom, it comes right back. No.
Bill Schindler was in the middle of Sardinia and told us this story that like every single day, wherever they went, they would have this big platter of cured meats. And then later on in the trip, he asked somebody how often they eat meat. And the guy responded and said once a week. And Bill's like, once a week, I eat more meat here than I eat at home. What are you talking about? And they were like, yeah, that's the day we kill a goat or a pig and we roast it and feed it to everybody. That's what they talked about as far as eating meat was like one time a week. When that's constantly what their diet is. It's absurd. And the people there, he was like, they keep asking about minestrone soup. I don't get what this outside obsession is with minestrone soup. We don't even eat it that often. It's weird.
No, that's interesting. And when we adopted the boys, we had a driver take us to the orphanage, foster home. And he drove us for, a week, and then we came back and he drove us for a week then. And we were like, Milky, we want to give you money. But we want to know what you want to spend it on, because there's nothing to buy. Like, it's just like, what do you buy? And he's like, meat.
Wow.
So he's like, I want to buy meat. And that's what he spent it on. And it was just interesting because the meat store is basically this shed, like this tin shed, and the meat is hanging there. And I saw it hanging there all week. And they just, cut pieces off. But if you look, and in the book, the carnivore book, we talk about that, our digestive system, our pH is lower than a hyena. Like, we are meant to eat tainted meat, but people are taking acid blockers, all of these things that you can no longer handle. Like, I talk, like, my dad's like, oh, you can't eat that. I was like, I have an iron stomach, Dad, it's fine. But he was on acid blockers for many years. And if he eats something that's, he just gets very, very sick.
Yep. That's a really, really good point. I love that. You mentioned Bali, and I definitely want to talk about your retreats. But before we do, I want to talk about your experience on the Reversed documentary. We've gotten a host, Charles, on our show who did the documentary, invited you and some other experts out to do it was carnivore type of was it a week long?
Well, I did two of them. The first one was a keto one.
That's right.
And that was a couple of years ago. And then the last one was a carnivore one. And it was only 1 week. Very intense, because I also did all the cooking. So, like, people want to eat from, someone wants breakfast, some people don't eat breakfast. Some people are eating at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. It was a lot, but
Charles said you were busy.
Yeah,
remember that.
I love to cook though. And it was really cool. I actually keep in contact with most of the participants. They want me to come moose hunting with them in Canada. Or just, one of them, she said that we helped change her life. Craig and I did, before she was on the show. And we still text every once in a while, like, hey, how was your holiday? This and that. And she's just very, very sweet, Natalie.
That's great. Yeah, I recall I watched the keto one. I haven't watched the carnivore one yet, and I know that there was at least one, maybe multiple people that were invited back to the carnivore one. It's almost like they fell off the wagon. And at first, I was like, why would you invite somebody who didn't take it as seriously in the first? But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of liked the idea. Do you think it really stuck with people long term? The people that you keep up with, are they still at least in that ballpark?
I'm trying to think of the participants. They were all different, but the speakers were some of the same. But yeah, I would say that, some of the carnivore participants either stayed with it, or like they opened it up, like they got their health benefits and then they added some more things in. But yeah, I know Natalie is definitely 100% carnivore. She has been for a long time. She has autoimmune issues like Craig does, and she just feels so much better. It's not worth, like, for 15 minutes of pleasure of eating, to feel awful for months. It's not worth it. It's just not.
It's not worth it. Yeah, I totally agree. So did I have that wrong then? Did they not have participants that were in both? Were they all unique?
They all were unique. I'm trying to think of, like Penny, and they all were different people.
Okay, gotcha. Very cool. Well, I think it's cool that anybody is making a documentary about that, and that word can get out in a different way. And let's talk about your retreat. So you've already mentioned Bali. You went to the coolest places last year, Croatia, Italy, all kinds of cool spots. Can you tell us about how that kind of got started and what you like to do with those?
Well, some woman messaged me on, I don't know, Facebook or something. This was many, many, many years ago. Oh, Maria, I want to take you to Italy and we'll show people how to eat keto and this and that. And I was like, Craig, some lady, this and that. And he's like, give her your phone number, see what happens. So I gave her my phone number, and she's like my second mom. We talk a lot. It was in February that we talked. In June, we had a huge, a nice crew that came with us to Italy. And it was like my first time, like, I never thought I could afford to travel ever. And so I always watched all the movies about Italy and these places, and to actually be there, like, I'm not I was like pinching myself. I was like, this can't be real, right? I feel so lucky to get to go on this trip and teach, like I'm hired to teach people, right? And yeah, it's just like the coolest thing. And I just want people to know I'm not a judgy person. I said that earlier. But there's times people want a gelato or pasta. They're in Italy. I don't care. As long as you don't judge me for my choices, I will not judge you, but I'm going to teach you that hopefully you're inspired to go home and change your life. Because some people that came with a friend that they weren't keto but they were inspired and learned a lot. And that's what my goal is. If they change
Right.
one thing, that's all that matters. And we were in Bali. I was in Greece, Croatia. We're going to go to Thailand in March and Portugal in May. And I think back to Italy in September. So if anybody here's the thing, like I'm as an adult with, busy teenage boys, I have a hard time making friends because it's work and family and this and that. And I am an introvert. I mean, I love people, but I'm an introvert that's out on my paddleboard if I have free time, or that's just how I roll, right? I'm not about to do a social thing. But when I do those trips, I don't even miss my family because I just have so much fun laughing and making friends. And, it's just so there's only about 15 people. And so it's just such we all still like our groups. I have a Bali group, I have a Greece group, a Croatia. We all like contact each other, like, how's it going? And this and that. And I just love it.
That's fantastic.
I would just you're invited to come. Everybody's invited to come. I understand, like, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but if you love to travel, don't be afraid to come alone. I come alone, and I feel so alive traveling alone because I do what I want. Right. And it's just, I love it. Come with me.
That sounds absolutely amazing. And yeah, 2020 was a terrible time for a lot of people, but for you and I, probably was pretty great to be like, oh, all events are canceled. I get to just stay home and watch mindless TV. It was awesome.
Well, it was so funny because everybody's like, how's your life changed with COVID? I was like, well, not a lot because we work from home, we homeschool. I'm an introvert. I prefer movies at home. Like we were in Hawaii, so I would just go out on my paddleboard alone. Like it was just like, okay.
It's great.
Yeah, kind of.
Awesome. Well, how are you helping people in other ways? I know you do coaching programs. You've got one coming up in January, I believe. It's all about the carnivore program. What kinds of things are you working with people now today?
Well, I can't keep up with clients, but I consult people every day. But there was definitely a need for a proper education in nutrition. And so Craig and I have basically a keto carnivore college where we teach you everything you need to know. We actually start a website for you. So if you don't want to pay to have a website, you take our program, our college, and we teach you everything about protein sparing to carnivore to keto. And then we also help you with your clients along the way. So if you have a very difficult client that you can't answer the question, you just send us a message and we're always answering them, whether it be an email or whatever. We have weekly meetings. And then, you have business in a box. So you have meal plans ready for you. You have the website ready for you. Everything's ready. You just have to be, marketing yourself. So, and then we teach you about photography if you want to do food photography and a book or something like that. So it's not just a coaching program, but I'm just very proud of my coaches. They've come so far and done so much, and yeah, it's really fun. And then we have some like challenges, like a carnivore challenge going on in January. If you missed the sign up, you could always start now, or do we'll probably do it again in February, March, just to keep people going. Yeah.
No, that's great. I love that. And it's a cool way to influence people because each one of the coaches are going to go out and create their own ripple effect with everybody else out there. So it's awesome that you've been able to expand out in that capacity, and just knowing everything that you've done with all the other work and content and everything you've created. It's all so well done and beautiful, and just it's easy to understand. The thing I like about it the most is it's shareable. Like I can take any one of these cookbooks and I can give them to any of my clients and they would benefit from them. There's a lot of other amazing carnivore content that I really love that I can't share with people because it's a little bit too complicated, and that's fine. That's good for what it is. But that's one thing that I really appreciate about yours, and I have no reservations recommending any of your stuff to anybody because I know they'll get a really, really good experience.
You are a blessing. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm really grateful for you and for taking the time out of your incredibly busy life
Oh, it
to
was
hang
an
out
honor.
with us.
It was
Well,
an
I feel
honor.
guilty after you showed me before getting on what the beach looks like right now. I feel guilty keeping you for any 1 minute longer on this podcast
Oh,
when you could be outside getting some sunshine. I'm so jealous.
that no, I'm grateful for this. So yeah, just come over and join us sometime.
That's a great idea. I would absolutely love to do that. I'm a little bit familiar with Kihei. I didn't get many rides on the longboard, but just enough to stand up, and it's
Yeah,
it's a beautiful part of the world. It's absolutely
thank you.
lovely. For now, Maria, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, the easiest place is just go to ketomaria.com and everything's there from the trips if you want to come on a retreat. Can you tell like that's my marketing place? Like I always push people to the trips because that's like my favorite thing to do. But if you want to become a coach, you can become a coach there. But free stuff, if you go all the way to the bottom, we have like 4 or 5 different free Facebook groups, a carnivore group, a keto group, a sugar-free kids group, a protein sparing group. So those are all free and we will answer questions. Like we're not like you got to pay a Patreon, it's free. And then we also have the free YouTube links are at the bottom of Keto Maria. There's a whole bunch of information, and then I also have the blog on Keto Maria. If you click to go to the blog, there's thousands of free recipes and information, sometimes giveaways on there. Yeah, so don't miss that, because I understand like there was a time I couldn't afford a book, so if you can't, just use those recipes, it's good.
Yeah, and that's what I love again about your stuff is like the person who is listening to this conversation and is sick of being sick, the resources are there. There are things that you can do. There's no excuse anymore. You can go and find it. It takes a bit of effort and it takes the willingness to change, but you can do it. And as somebody who has experienced a lot of chronic issues in your life, being much healthier and much happier, it's so absolutely worth it.
It is worth
So
it.
worth it.
I don't feel like I'm missing out at all. I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you again, Maria, for coming on our show today. Thank you for all of the work you've done in our community. It's amazing, and it's such an inspiration to have you on our show. And like I said, we know you're very, very busy. So thank you so very much for coming on today. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.